you, that rare minority, we will take away your right to that pleasure to protect the great majority. Human welfare. The welfare of the society as a whole is given precedence over the desires and the pleasures of the individual. Similarly, polygamy or polygyny, correct name in Islam. The question is usually raised by Muslims and non-Muslims. When a woman's husband takes a second wife, isn't it hurtful for her? Doesn't she feel hurt? Why would Islam permit something wherein there is hurt for women? It's not to say there are not a minority of women who don't have a problem. Your husband have a second wife, no problem. Minority. The vast majority have a problem. They are jealous. It hurts them. So why would Islam permit, why would Allah legislate something in which there is harm to women? We know it must be because the benefit which comes from polygyny far outweighs the harm which comes from polygyny to women. It far outweighs it. Meaning that if we have a society wherein we say monogamy is the law, monogamy, everybody has to be monogamous, and the laws of monogamy came from Greece and Rome. They're not intrinsic to Christianity. They came from Greek and Roman law. Greece and Rome, where a man was only allowed to marry one woman, but he could have as many concubines as he wished. So where was the monogamy? There wasn't any monogamy. Monogamy didn't exist then, and it doesn't exist now. Because surveys done of married males in North America, in England, in Europe, have shown that the vast majority have had extramarital affairs. The vast majority have had extramarital affairs. That's the nice way of saying they committed adultery. So, where is the monogamy? Polygamy is being practiced. Wherever you go on the face of this earth, polygamy is the norm. What Islam came and did was it regulated polygamy, set systems, guidelines, rights, obligations in that context. So the benefit is that it provides a means where the natural inclinations of males may be fulfilled within the bounds of the law, wherein the rights of women and children are protected. This is the principle. So, whenever we look at these various laws, we should try to understand within them wherein lies the realization of public welfare. That is the nature, fundamental principle governing Islamic law. So when people complain and they say, as the Taliban have done and they do in Saudi Arabia, this thing of hacking off people's hands, they don't just say amputating, They will either say hacking off people's hands, or chopping off people's hands. They give you the idea that you take a meat chopper, a meat cleaver, and you're crack till you tear off the person's hand, or you get a saw and you're sawing off their hands. I always try to put it in the worst scenario, right? This is, for the crime they've committed, public welfare. Again, this is the principle. That by removing that person's hand, the society is protected from his harm. There is deterrence there. Either you know that if you steal, you're going to lose your hand, so you think twice and thrice before you steal. Or you go ahead and steal and you got caught and you lost your hand, you'll think twice and thrice and 4 times and 5 times before you steal again, because you might lose your leg next time, right? Okay. So just the application of that principle is enough to achieve for the society this state of security. This is one of the things which impressed many of the American troops that were there after the Gulf War, who were, I mentioned before that myself and some other brothers were involved in a dawah program amongst them for some 5 months, 5.5 months, explaining Islam to them and so on, over 3,000 of them accepted Islam. A number of them, among the reasons which led them to accept Islam was the fact that they used to come in off maneuvers, out in the desert or whatever, and they would come into the city in Dammam, which stayed open. Normally things would close up around midnight, but they would stay open like 24 hours because of business, and they would be able to walk downtown Dammam, which is it looks like, American city, built up buildings, all this kind of thing, stores, all open. They would be able to walk down, men or women, able to walk down the streets by themselves, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and not fear anything. They could buy gold, wear it on their hands, gold chains. Of course, this guy's going to buy all this gold chains and stuff, walk in the streets, no problem. Hey, if you did that in New York City or Chicago, man, they chop off your hand to get to those rings. You'd be finished in a moment. So this is one of the things that really impressed them. That the level of security where the society, they went into people's homes, we would take them into people's homes, and they didn't see any latches. Of course, when people come home in big cities in America, you got a whole, series of lockdown maneuvers that you have to go through. You lock up, you press the buttons, and you latch, and and if you forget and you wake up in the middle of the night, oh my God, you're running back down the church, making sure your life is in a state of insecurity, right? So this is the product. And they ask, why? We tell them, because hands are cut off. I say, makes sense. Makes sense. So always, whenever we deal with these types of issues, when we understand the underlying principles, the issues become clear. When we don't understand the underlying principles, then of course from a Western perspective, you look at these things, it does seem to be rather harsh. Rather harsh. And the last of the major principles that may be deduced from the Islamic legal system, primarily from the Quran but also from the Sunnah, both being from Revelation, is what we call the realization of universal justice. And this was exemplified by the incident in the Prophet Muhammad's life in which a woman from the Makhzum tribe had stolen something. And she was from the upper class of the society. She was caught. Her hand was to be cut off. So they went to Usama ibn Zayd, the former, we would say, grandson of the adopted son of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, Zayd ibn Haritha. They went to him due to some position of influence they had, and they asked him to intercede on her behalf. So Usama went to the Prophet ﷺ and put in a word. And they went to Usama ibn Zayd. Why? Because everybody knew that the Prophet ﷺ loved Usama. Loved him. Really, he was very dear to him. So when Usama made this suggestion, the Prophet ﷺ was very upset. He said to him, Usama, would you dare to intercede in the laws that Allah has prescribed? Then he called all the people, and he stood up amongst them and he said, O people, the people before you were destroyed because when the rich among them stole, they didn't apply the law. But when the poor among them stole, they applied the full force of the law. If my own daughter Fatima stole, I would cut off her hand. That is the concept of universal justice. This is reinforced in many of the verses in the Quran where Allah says, for example, O you who believe, stand out firmly for Allah as witnesses to fair dealing, and do not let the hatred of a people cause you not to be just. Be just, for it is closer to piety, and fear Allah, for verily Allah is well aware of whatever you do. So this principle of universal justice insists that Islamic law be applied equally to all. Everybody is governed by the law. There is none above the law. That doesn't mean that you may not find a Muslim society which claims to be applying Islamic law, but they have sections that are above the law. This happens, but that is proof that they are not applying Islamic law as it should be. They're applying a part of it, and they're not applying another part. So we always judge these kind of situations based on not what people do, but what they are supposed to do. Now, as an example of the application of qiyas, and there are a number of examples in the book based on our time frame. I will not go into each and every one of them. The most obvious example of qiyas in our times, wherein its application has changed, is that concerning the laws governing smoking. Right? You hear the usual controversy among people. Is it makruh? Isn't it makruh? Some people saying it's haram. Is it haram? It's not in the Quran, so how could it be haram? Muslims have always said it was makruh. How can somebody come along today and say it's haram? Well, if we look at the history of tobacco, and of course it came from North America, taken back to Europe by Sir Walter Raleigh, smoking out of a pipe, clay pipes. Eventually it worked its way among the upper class to Ottoman Turkey in around the 16th or 17th century. And when it came among the Ottomans and people began to use it, or people wanted to use it, the scholars of the time had to address how this act would be categorized, because everything in Islam is falls under one of the rulings. Either it is haram, prohibited, or it's wajib, you must do it, or it is mustahab, you are recommended to do it, or it's makruh, it's disliked for you to do it, or it's neutral. Whether you do it, you don't do it, all the same. So they had to find a ruling for it. They observed those who smoked, what was the consequence? What was the effects of smoking? The only discernible negative effects, because of course that's what they're looking for, negative effects. If there are no negative effects, it's okay. Because the general ruling for foods and dress and things which are not connected directly with the religion is that it is all okay unless it has been specifically prohibited. That's the general ruling. Whereas when we deal with religious acts, the ruling changes. It is all forbidden unless there is specific instructions to permit it. That law changes. Why? Because innovation in religion is prohibited, so the law has to function like that. Whereas innovation in our daily lives is encouraged. That's why the law functions the other way. So they were looking for harm. And what they found was that smoking causes this bad breath of the smokers. That's what they could see. When they smoked, the breath changed, and the well-known smoker's breath occurred bad. So, what was the ruling? What would be the ruling on things which cause bad breath? They went back into the Sharia to look to see what did Allah have to say. And they found in the statement of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, anyone who eats raw onions or raw garlic should not come to our mosques. Prophet ﷺ prohibited people who eat raw garlic and raw onions from coming to the mosque. Meaning you eat it before coming. Doesn't mean if you eat it any time. Last year you can't come to the mosque. No. Just if you're eating it before coming to the mosque. Why? Because of the harm. Here's your general welfare you're looking about again, right? General welfare. In the salah, when we finish the salah, we turn to each other saying what? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Right, yeah. You know, after eating garlic and onions, this becomes harm. We're harming our brothers here and our sisters. So Prophet ﷺ said, stay home. Better you stay home. Now, what is happening? When he said, stay home and don't pray in the masjid, he is depriving you of 27 times more blessing. Isn't it? Because prayer in the masjid is 25 to 27 times more than praying by yourself at home. So when eating raw onions or garlic will cause you to lose those additional benefits, the ruling on the eating of raw onions and garlic became makruh, disliked. Not haram, not forbidden, but disliked. Disliked why? Because it is depriving, it will deprive you of additional reward. So, makruh. So they said, okay, the bad breath of the smoker is like the bad breath of those who eat raw onions and garlic. So we rule that smoking is makruh. 500 years ago, scholars ruled it was makruh. But we all know that the Surgeon General of the United States of America in 1979 announced to the American public that it has been conclusively shown that smoking causes cancer. Conclusively. This is after a long fight, a long struggle. The tobacco companies paid their scientists to fight that body of information that was accumulating, pointing towards this fact. Because actually scientists said that way back. But they didn't have absolute conclusive evidence. So the tobacco companies, they paid scientists big money to stand up and say, no, it is not definite. It may appear, or there seems to be, but we don't have conclusive evidence. Now when the Surgeon General brought it to that point, this is now when the evidence became so overwhelming that no credible scientist would dare to stand up and say it is not conclusively proven. He would, to do that, remove any credibility he had in the scientific world. The evidence was overwhelming. So the statement was made. And of course, we all know the history, a whole change in America. Smoking started on the decline. Cigarette packs written there, this is hazardous to health, this can cause cancer, all these different kinds of things. So, Muslim scholars who were not locked into tradition, right? There are the traditionalist, factionalist scholars who are locked into tradition and factionalism, where this is what our scholars said 500 years ago, we will go with this ruling until the last day. This is ignorance. This is from fiqh. This is not sharia. That ruling was not revelation. That was applied revelation based on the knowledge of the times. Once the knowledge changes, then we now must go back into the Sunnah and look to see what is there in the Sunnah and in the Quran to address substances which cause cancer, illness, and we know cancer causes death. We have a different situation here now. And of course, the Quran prohibits it. La taqtulu anfusakum, don't kill yourselves. Prophet ﷺ prohibited it, saying that whoever kills himself will find himself in the hellfire, killing himself perpetually. So all the evidence said that these type of substances are haram. So the scholars that were progressive scholars who are not locked into traditionalism, they immediately changed the ruling and said smoking is haram. Sheikh bin Baz was among those leading scholars. He wrote about 4 books proving that smoking is haram. So some people say, well, who says really that smoking kills? And we know this, the old lady who lived to the age of 113 in China, she used to smoke a cigar every day. So it's not necessary that you smoke, you will die. We say, again, do we make our laws according to exceptions? Or do we make it according to the general rule? The general rule is that those who smoke get cancer and die. The Marlboro man is dead. He died from lung cancer. His wife is suing the Marlboro company for killing him. Okay, that's the reality. And we in our lives function according to the general rule. We don't function according to the exception. When we have to make decisions, we make our rulings according to the general rule. For example, I have a photograph of this guy sitting in a wheelchair, right? He has his 2 thumbs up like that, a big smile on his face. He's sitting in the wheelchair, but he has big smile, 2 thumbs up. The caption underneath, he was a parachutist. Jumped out of the airplane, 40,000 feet or whatever, pulled his ripcord, no shoot. Pulled his back up, shoot, no shoot. He fell some 36,000 feet, and he lived to tell about it. There he was in the wheelchair. Maybe almost every bone in his body was broken, but he came through it. Right? Allahu Akbar. Now, when you go on the airplane and you're going to do parachuting, are you going to jump out and say, perhaps I will be like that guy? Or are you going to strap yourself down with 4 chutes? You understand? To make sure you don't find yourself in that same situation. That's the reality. That's how we function. We don't go according to the exception. We go according to the rule. Right? Other people, they argue, hey, it's not suicide. I don't take a cigarette, smoke it, and I drop down dead. Now, people commit suicide. They kill themselves. It's clear. We say there is no difference. Whether you kill yourself in an instant or you kill yourself after a period of time. If every day you take an eyedropper and you drop in your orange juice in your breakfast 1 drop of poison, and at the end of the year it accumulates in your body and you finally drop down dead, is that any different from you taking that full glass of poison and killing yourself in 1 shot? No. Because you are taking something which you knew would kill you. So whether it happens instantly or it happens after a period of time, it's all the same. The act of taking something, knowing that it will kill you, this is an act fundamentally of suicide. So, smoking, the correct ruling with regards to smoking is that it is haram. And we can see the flexibility also in Islamic law concerning qiyas, wherein if somebody told you you are diabetic and the doctor informs you that if you take sugar you will become comatose and you will die, then for you sugar is haram. Though it is halal for everybody else, for you it is haram. Okay, that's how the law is applied. One more point before I stop here for a break, and we won't be able to take questions right now. We'll just deal with the questions after because we have to cover material. One more point is that the principle with regards to intoxicants, when we have to determine whether a substance can be taken or not, we have medicines, foods, drinks, etc., which may have in them 0.01 or 0.5 or 0.2% alcohol. It's written on the label. Can we take these substances or not? When we go back to the Sunnah and the Quran, of course, Quran says clearly we should avoid intoxicants. Fajtanibu. Don't even come near it. What does that mean? One could deduce from that it means that if there is any alcohol in anything, anywhere, don't even come near it. What about antifreeze? It's alcohol. We use it to stop the cars from freezing up and being able to. Antifreeze is alcohol. So when we say don't come near it, it means don't come near it with regards to drinking it, consuming it. Not that you may not use it, to clean. You have, rubbing alcohol, you have cleaning alcohol. And we have to be careful. Chemically, there are things which we call alcohol merely because they have the OH molecule. This is a chemical title. It doesn't mean that if you take this you'll get intoxicated. Maybe it'll kill you, make you blind, and you're still not intoxicated. You understand? So you don't take these things because they're harmful. I mean, that's the general principle, right? And though we call it alcohol, it doesn't necessarily mean it's alcohol in the sense intended by the Sharia. So when we go into the Sunnah, we find a principle there stated by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu Ma askara kathiruhu faqaliluhu haram. Whatever intoxicates in large amounts, it is forbidden in small amounts. Whatever intoxicates in large amounts is forbidden in small amounts. Now, what people understood from that is that medicine, that cake, or this flavoring or whatever which has 0.0% alcohol, there it is, haram. Because you take a large quantity of alcohol, it's haram. It'll get you intoxicated, it's haram. But is that what the law meant? Is that what was meant by the law? Some people say yes. Some people say no. So how do we know? We again go back to whom? To the Sahaba. How did the Sahaba understand that? They said, and it's in Sahih Bukhari, we used to take our drinks to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our nabidh, which is fermented drinks, to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and ask him, can we drink these drinks? And he told us that if it intoxicates, you're not allowed to drink it. So we used to drink nabidh for the first 2 or 3 days. After that, we threw it away. Because in the first 2 or 3 days, when the fermentation process started, it was not intoxicant. It had a tang to it. But if you drank it, you didn't get intoxicated. But by the 3rd day, now the alcohol content in it had reached a level where you drank it, you would get intoxicated. So that they wouldn't take it after that. But what does this mean? It means that from the first day, when fermentation began, alcohol was present. Alcohol was present. So, if a substance has a percentage of alcohol, we don't use that to determine whether halal or haram. No. Vinegar has alcohol. Every bottle of vinegar you buy on the market has a percentage of alcohol, because vinegar is made from alcohol. You start with fruit juice or whatever, and then it ferments into alcohol, and after reaching the state of alcohol, it continues fermentation until it becomes vinegar. But in the process, some alcohol will be in that vinegar, because it will not transform 100%. And vinegar, we know, is halal. Because no matter how many bottles of vinegar you drink, you're not going to get intoxicated. So similarly, what is meant by what intoxicates in small amounts, in large amounts is forbidden in small amounts. What this means is that vodka, if you drink a glass of it, you get intoxicated. Or depending, if you are a heavy drinker, it may take 5 glasses, right? But you will get intoxicated, you drink a bunch of it. To take a teaspoonful of it is haram. Right? You just pour it in a teaspoon. I'm not drinking enough now to get intoxicated, only a teaspoon. That is haram. Because you fill the glass, you get intoxicated, so haram. That's the principle. Now the medicine, which has 0.1% of alcohol, if you drank 5 bottles of it, you drank 10 bottles of it, you're not getting intoxicated. You will drink it until you drown yourself in it, and you'll still not be intoxicated. It is not haram. It's not haram. The flavoring, which ends up in cake or whatever, there is this minute percentage. That flavoring, if you pour it into a glass and you drink so many glasses of this stuff, vanilla extract, you drink them. Are you ever going to get intoxicated from vanilla extract? No. Then it's not haram. Robotessence. Yes. Robotessence is known, right? Those who are involved in drugs, whenever they can't get drugs, you go and you buy yourself a few bottles of Robotessence, you drink it up, and you do get intoxicated. So Robotessence is haram. That is the principle. You understand? This is qiyas in operation here. Where that principle of intoxication exists, then this substance is haram. Where the principle doesn't exist, it is not haram. Now, can Muslims produce something, a product, which involves them adding minute quantities of alcohol to it? No. We can't. Because it means you had to produce alcohol or buy alcohol. So for you to make it, if this substance you're making, for example, you're making vanilla extract. To make the vanilla extract, you blend some alcohol and you put your substance in it, which acts as a catalyst, whatever. But in your end product, that percentage of alcohol does remain. You can't make that, because it means you have to buy alcohol or make alcohol. That is haram. It is haram to even grow grapes with the intention of selling it to people who are going to make alcohol. That's haram. So we can't do it. But if you go to the marketplace and the non-Muslims are selling vanilla extract, you can buy it. Though you couldn't produce it because there are certain restrictions on you, if it exists on the market, it exists in trade, you can purchase it and you can use it. Is that point clear? Very, very important point, because I think it's confused in the minds of many, many people, and as such they created difficulties for themselves which was not intended by the Sharia.